so inspired to be able to introduce my friend, Linda Ryden. She's founder and creator of Peace of Mind. I'm going to ask for the liberty of just 60 seconds to say why I really wanted this school age level peace teaching program to speak to you all today. I worked in international development for over 30 years, and I observed in that time our infrastructure, things that would help finance in the infrastructure level, be destroyed by civil conflict. And I saw institutional improvements that we had hoped to support be thwarted by authoritarian governments and military coups in my life. So I decided to retire early from my international development career and study peace and conflict resolution, which I did. I started out with the usual diplomatic, transactional kind of courses, but I slowly realized what Linda has understood from the start, that you really need to transform conflict and really build peace. You need a culture that has empathy and kindness kind of built in, and you need a society that has practices and strategies to resolve conflicts in an agreeable way, especially learning to see the other side, all sides of a conflict. So I was so happy to meet and to find out more about Peace of Mind, because that's exactly what they do. They just start at the elementary level. Linda founded this program. She started teaching like one day a week, and then found that, they got over the conflicts in the classroom, but they were still having arguments out on the playground. So she expanded to like 5 days. This is one DC elementary school where it started. And pretty soon, those playground arguments got resolved by the kids. It's just wonderful to watch them coming around and explain to us adults how they resolved them. But more importantly, a lot of other schools in DC and then the DMV and now all over the US have learned about this program. And so Linda organized with some friends this nonprofit and to help spread the word. And she also developed curriculum. She wrote books. These are my copies. The Rosie's Brain says how, where do emotions come from and how can you learn to control them? Henry is Kind talks about how important kindness is and how it can resolve issues. So I'm going to shut up and let Linda come up, but I will just say that she lives in DC with her husband, Jeremiah, and she has 2 kids, Rosie and Henry, who are grown now, but they are very kind.
Oh, that's a lovely introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I've been a longtime admirer of Charlotte and her work and her dedication to peace and conflict resolution. And so it's very exciting for me to have this opportunity to talk to all of you at her invitation. So I'm very grateful. I'm also very grateful that my partner, Ashley Brown, was able to join me today. You'll be hearing from her later. We have a small nonprofit organization that she took over in May of this year, and she has some really big visionary ideas for how we can expand this work at a time when it has never been more urgent. And so I just feel extremely lucky to have met her and to be able to work together with her. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about how I kind of came up with the idea for Peace of Mind. I started teaching what would become Peace of Mind in the aftermath of 9/11. And this was another time kind of similar to now when we were all very scared and things were very uncertain, and we were looking for answers. We were looking for a better way. I was teaching elementary school music back then. My kids were in elementary school. And I really felt strongly that there was nothing in the curriculum at our school that focused on peace, that focused on kindness, that focused on conflict resolution. And I felt like, given what we had just experienced on 9/11, that those were skills that were desperately needed in our world. And I thought that they should be something that we would teach at school. So I proposed a class, and the principal said yes, and I started teaching. And I became, for 20 years, I was the peace teacher at Lafayette Elementary School in DC. That was my full-time job. And those were wonderful, wonderful years. And during that time, I was able to create what became the Peace of Mind curriculum. I started out teaching conflict resolution, and I read some books about conflict resolution, and I started to teach my classes. And in class, the kids got very good at working out conflicts in class. But at recess, they would have fights. And it was so disappointing because I was working so hard and the classes were going so well and it was very popular. But after about a year, I was very disappointed because I felt like the impact that I had hoped for really wasn't happening. We just weren't seeing the kind of dramatic improvement in the sort of the spirit of the school and the environment that I had hoped for. And one day I had a real aha moment because I was in my classroom and two kids were sent to me after recess because they'd gotten into a big fight. And they came into my classroom and they were all mad and red-faced. And I said, guys, you were in my classroom this morning. We were practicing conflict resolution this morning. And then you went to recess and got into a fight. What happened? Why didn't you use the conflict resolution skills? And they looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, Miss Ryden, I was too angry to think. Miss Ryden, I was so angry, I didn't remember anything you said. And I was really stunned. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I knew there was something wrong with the way I was teaching, but I really wasn't sure what it was. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and I started to think about what was missing. And what I realized was that I wasn't teaching the kids how to calm down when they were in a conflict. And the things that I was asking them to do in a conflict, like come up with a compromise, were not things that you could really do when you were really angry. So I started to look around for some way to teach kids how to calm down. I didn't really know, but after a bunch of research, what I kind of landed on was mindfulness. And mindfulness, this is about 20 something years ago, mindfulness was not the buzzword that it is now. It was not something that was being taught in schools. Most people really didn't know much about it, including me. But I decided to learn. I decided to start practicing myself. And I decided to start teaching some simple mindfulness practices to my students, simple breathing practices. If you don't know what mindfulness is, a very simple definition is just paying attention to what's happening inside you and what's happening all around you. We teach simple breathing practices that help us to settle down into the moment. Take 5 breathing is one. This you just trace your hand and breathe in and out as you're tracing slowly. And I really, as I said, started teaching mindfulness because I wanted to help the kids calm down. And it did do that, but I realized that mindfulness had so many other benefits for the kids and for the adult. One of the things that it can help you do is to manage overwhelming feelings. It can help you to regulate your emotions. It can help you to understand your emotions. It can help you to pay attention to your thoughts. We learn about metacognition and how to think about what we're thinking about. And we can also use mindfulness practices to develop empathy and compassion for ourselves and for other people. And these are all extremely important skills that help kids and adults in so many ways. We teach mindfulness in a whole bunch of different ways in our curriculum. And they're all very important and different in their ways. The kids loved it. The adults in my school thought it was pretty weird what I was trying to do, but the kids really loved it. They really were open to it. And I think they really felt like this was something that was helping them. And it was helping me too. And remember that dramatic impact I was hoping for before? Now we were seeing it. The combination of teaching mindfulness and conflict resolution made a huge difference. Suddenly, we had so many fewer fights. Kids weren't getting sent to the office. The principal started noticing. The numbers started to look really good. And everybody was very excited. But then I started to wonder, how does it work? Why does taking deep breaths help you to calm down? And that's when I started to learn about brain science. And at this point, I was going to show a little video, but I think instead I'm just going to talk to you about this. So what I learned about brain science is very small. And if there are any brain scientists here in the room, please just don't tell me because I'll be so embarrassed. But I know a little bit about the brain, but what I learned totally changed my life and the lives of my students. I was so excited about it. I even wrote a book about it that Charlotte shared earlier called Rosie's Brain. What I learned about were three parts of the brain that I had never heard of before: the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. And the amygdala is the part of your brain that acts as the security guard. The amygdala is the part of your brain that is always watching out for danger in order to keep you safe. And the amygdala can do three things if it thinks that you're in danger: fight, flight, run away, or freeze. That's it. When your amygdala takes over, when it thinks that you're in danger, it turns off your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that does all the thinking and deciding and choosing and putting things together. It also turns off your hippocampus. That's the part of your brain that remembers things. So remember those kids that got sent to my classroom after recess when they were in a fight? Remember they said, "I was so angry, I couldn't think. I was so angry, I couldn't remember anything you said." I suddenly realized, oh my God, that's what happened. Their amygdala had taken over their brains. They thought they were in danger. Now, I think like somebody had taken the basketball away from them. They weren't really in danger, but they were mad, and their brain interpreted that as danger and took over. And they got into a fight. So I was really blown away by this information. And what I learned was that mindfulness is a great way to talk to your amygdala, to tell your amygdala that you're not actually in danger. Taking slow, deep breaths, even if you don't really want to, even if you don't really mean it, can tell your amygdala that you're not in danger. Because think about how we breathe when we are in danger, right? I'm scared. I'm breathing deep, shallow, and I'm breathing fast. So if I slow down my breath, my amygdala thinks I'm safe. And so it says, okay, you don't need me right now. Turns your prefrontal cortex on. That's the thinking part. It turns your hippocampus back on. That's the remembering part. And then you can think and you can make choices. So when we're in a conflict, we don't really want the amygdala in charge if we want to work out our conflict peacefully, because that's not the part of our brain that can do that. It's the same thing for kids in school. If they're taking a test and they suddenly get really panicked that they don't know the answers, their amygdala can take over. Their amygdala doesn't know how to do math. Their amygdala doesn't know how to spell words, right? Their amygdala knows how to fight, flight, or freeze. So they need to calm themselves down in order to use their PFC and their hippocampus, the parts of the brain that they need. So I taught this to my students through my book and through other lessons. And this was, I will say, life-changing information for a lot of my students, because a lot of my students were known as kids who had anger issues and who were getting into fights a lot because they were very quick to anger. They were told that their anger, that their temper was a character flaw, that there was something wrong with them, when in fact, their brain was telling them that they were in danger. And for some of my students, they were coming from an environment that was dangerous. And so they were sort of trained. Their brain was trained to look out for danger. Their brain was trained to be always thinking that there was danger around the corner, because in reality, it was. So they weren't doing anything wrong, and there was nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with anger. What I was trying to help them understand, and myself, is that when we let the amygdala drive the bus, we will often do things that are not in our own best interest. Fighting is not in our own best interest. Running away from a situation, sometimes, but it's not going to solve the problem. Freezing up and doing nothing is not going to help you solve a problem peacefully. So we need the prefrontal cortex to help us to solve our problems, but we can't use our prefrontal cortex when our amygdala is in charge. So now the kids were able to understand why the mindfulness practices were helpful to them, why they should use them. I mean, if you've ever been dealing with an angry child and you said, take some deep breaths, They don't want to, right? They're not going to want to take those deep breaths, and it'll probably make them more angry. But with my students, they already knew the mindfulness practices. They knew the connection. So instead of saying, take some deep breaths, you're angry, I could say to them, what's happening in your brain right now? What part of your brain is in charge? Is this the part of your brain you want in charge right now? And then they knew what to do. Those were their skills for them. So learning all of that completely transformed the way I thought about conflict resolution, because what I had been trying to do originally was teach the kinds of conflict resolution skills that you can only use if you're calm. And so I was teaching those skills to kids without any other context. Now, the conflict resolution that I came up with, which I call the conflict cat, we learn about the conflict escalator. It's a way of thinking about how a conflict can start off as a small problem, but turn into a really big problem depending on the things that people say or do. And the conflict cat stands for 3 things: calm down, apologize, and toolbox. Calm down, it seems like a small thing, but that represents everything I've been talking about up until now. Calm down represents the mindfulness practice and the brain science that we've been learning and the connection between the two. Then we teach the kids how to apologize because, as you all know, most people hate apologizing and most people are really bad at apologizing. And our apologies often make things worse. So we teach kids how to apologize in a productive way that can help and take responsibility for whatever you did to escalate the conflict. Then, after all that, we get into the actual tools, like how do you work out a compromise, whether you could share, whether you could take turns, whether you just need to walk away from this particular conflict. So many different ways. I teach 8 tools, but there are millions of tools. When you're using your prefrontal cortex, when you're using your hippocampus, you can be creative and come up with lots of peaceful solutions to problems. Your amygdala does not know how to do that. The kids practice these conflict resolution skills by doing skits and role plays so that they over and over again can practice a different way of interacting with other people. Because this is not what they see modeled in our world, especially today. They're not seeing peaceful conflict resolution modeled by adults. And so we're trying to teach them something that's pretty radical and pretty counterculture, which is how to take responsibility for what you did, talk to other people calmly, take care of your own emotions, and then try to come to some kind of peaceful conflict resolution. It's not easy. And oftentimes when Ashley and I go to talk to schools, they say, we just want the conflict resolution part. And they want to skip over the C and the A, right? They just want to go to the tools. And we're like, that's just not how it works. I've tried it that way. It does not work that way. If it did, we'd be living in a very different world. So we have found that this is sort of the secret sauce of peace of mind that makes this program so effective and different from other programs. There are a lot of mindfulness programs out there, and those are great, but we're taking those mindfulness skills, adding in the brain science, and then applying those skills to things like conflict resolution. Oh, but wait, there's more. We don't just teach that. We also teach kindness and compassion. The kids every week have kindness pals, and those are random people that they're assigned to in their class to do things with, to do kind things for, to try to get to know a little bit. And it's a great way for kids to learn that they can learn how to be kind to other people. Kindness is a skill that can be taught. It can be practiced. People are taught how to hate other people. They can be taught how to be kind to other people too. And you can be kind to other people because of who you are, not because of who they are. And I think that's a really important distinction, that we don't have to have some kind of litmus test for who we're going to be kind to. We're kind because we are kind people. We teach about gratitude. We add a brain science aspect to our gratitude teaching by talking about and teaching about the negativity bias. I wrote a book about this too, how our brains tend to focus on negative things more than positive things, which is why it's difficult to be grateful sometimes, why it's difficult to see the good things in your life sometimes. Our brain is actually kind of preventing us from doing that, again, in order to try to keep us safe. We talk about social justice, and we try to help kids understand some of the big issues that are facing our society right now, and how they can make a difference, how they can stand up for other people, how they can stand up for themselves. And again, we use those mindfulness skills, like metacognition skills, where they start to notice what they're thinking, and they try to reflect on whether they're thinking their own thoughts or somebody else's thoughts or the culture's thoughts. And what do I really think about this? What do I really think about that person? We also teach a little bit of sign language in our classes. I've found that teaching a little bit of sign language to express feelings helps kids to express their feelings more, talk about their feelings, and think about what their feelings feel like in their bodies. So there's so much to the Peace of Mind program. That's Liam doing a little sign language. I've written 8 books for kids. I've illustrated some of them. They're all up here on the front. Some of them are translated into Spanish. These books are good as standalone books, but they're also part of our program. We have a curriculum that goes from our youngest learners, age 2, to our 8th graders. And Ashley and I are currently working on a high school curriculum because we've had so many requests to extend our program to high school. Thanks to your generosity, we were able to just recently publish this new curriculum for 2 to 5-year-olds. We found that a lot of people were trying to teach our pre-K curriculum to 2-year-olds. You wouldn't think that 2-year-olds would have a lot of problems to deal with, but apparently they did. And one of them was talking about their feelings. And so this particular curriculum focuses a lot on feelings and emotions. We teach some sign language in it, and also some very somatic mindfulness and play-based lessons. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the story of Peace of Mind. I'd like to ask Ashley to come up and join me, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you have. I tried to talk fast and get through a lot of stuff, but there's so much more to say.
I could tick off for you now the names of my elementary school bullies. And so I knew who they were. And the other thing I knew is adults would not or could not protect me. And so what I learned is the only way I could make them stop was with my fists. So you mentioned people who feel in danger. How do you deal with the fact that they are in danger and that the person who's dangerous is not practicing mindfulness?
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that, and that is no, it is something that we talk about. Bullying is something that we talk specifically about in the curriculum because it is a different kind of unkindness, and that kids experience. Unfortunately, there are a lot of different aspects to it, but one thing that we have found is that you really have to create a culture in which bullying would not be tolerated, that everybody, including the other kids who are the bystanders, have to learn that they have power to do something. I mean, every kid who's getting bullied knows that there are other kids who know about it. And so we do a lot of lessons that help kids understand that there are ways that they can say something, even if they don't say something with words. But if you're getting picked on at school, if these 4 kids all sit next to you at lunch every day, then you're less likely to get bothered. And so they realize that just by moving their bodies closer to you, they can make a difference in helping you. Or they can speak up and say, like, dude, we don't do that here at our school, things like that. So sometimes it's easier to change the behavior of the children than the adults. And it is sometimes difficult to get adults to intervene in bullying situations. I think it's certainly gotten better in today's elementary school than it was when you were a child. But it's a difficult challenge, but it's something that we do take on directly.
Do you believe that there is one standard template that fits all? Because I don't. I think that's a culture. It's an innovation.
No, I don't believe that there's a one size fits all answer. We We are in schools in every ward of DC, and the program is working really successfully in all schools. But we feel really strongly that the teachers in those schools need to make this program their own. And we don't go in and teach the program. We train the teachers at a school to teach this curriculum. It's a fully scripted curriculum if they want to use it, but they don't have to. When we do our trainings, we talk a lot about how important it is that the people who know the students best are the ones teaching, right? Do you want to add anything to that, Ashley?
I'll just say that prior to Peace of Mind, I did not have a social emotional learning curriculum to use, but at the time, I just kind of pieced things together. I have a background in counseling, and I just think that taking care of our mental and emotional health and having the tools to do it is extremely important in anything, whatever work people are doing with youth, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's college and career readiness. Students really need to be able students really need the tools to take care of themselves emotionally and mentally. And I was an English teacher. I taught 9th and 12th grade. They didn't really want to come in and read all the time. And so I knew that I had to do something, whether it was turning the lights off and turning on some music, or whether it was simply saying good morning to every single person and taking attendance by name and really taking out time to get to see, hey, how are you feeling today? And asking them explicitly, each person. So I think it's so important to incorporate social emotional learning in every aspect. And so I can say that as a former DC high school teacher who specifically taught in Title I schools, I purposely chose to teach students who look like me because I wanted them to see someone who looked like them teaching them, and because I didn't have that growing up very often. And so if I had this program, I can fully say with confidence that I would have used this program in my classroom, and I think it would have been successful. And Linda's right. The program is scripted, but I would not have used, these are Linda's words mostly. Linda and I don't talk the same. I'm going to talk to the students how I talk to them. And I'm going to switch it up and code switch or do whatever I need to do for students to hear from me what I'm trying to teach them beyond, hey, let's read and analyze this text and then write 5 paragraphs about it. So that was a long way to your question, but I think, yes, culture is important. And I think a lot of times it's who is sitting in front of the students teaching them that are able to consider the culture in teaching whatever the curriculum is.